Good morning, good evening, whatever time it is for you titanium nerds, whatever time it is that you're listening. I'm really happy to have a couple of mates on with me today. One gentleman you will probably know. He is the master of Bitcoin, the master of investment knowledge. It's James Martin, who's here with us today. And somebody who's been prolific on his podcast as well is Bilal, who's a chartered accountant. Is that correct? Chartered accountant, yeah. So this guy knows his taxes inside out, left to right, basically. And I thought we'd do something different today. So instead of talking about the titanium aspect of it, is talk about something that's confused me for a long time and something that I only found out about a week ago, I'm embarrassed to say. And that's, how to, the impact your training and your equipment has on your taxes, purely and simply because it's expensive getting trained, really expensive. I think I've said this before. I've spent about £250,000 on my own training, and what I assumed is, let's say your tax bill is 20 grand. If you spend 20 grand on expenses, your tax bill goes to zero. I found out last week that's not the case. So we're going to go into that into a bit more. And James, you're not even in the UK at the moment, are you? You're over in the US.
I am in sunny Nashville, and this place is so much fun. Do you know every concept you have of a Midwest town, like honky-tonk bars and saloons and people, cowboys? Everything is here. It's real, okay? Every stereotype you thought that there might possibly be about a town like this is all true, and it's a whole lot of fun, let me tell you.
When are you getting your boots on and doing some line dancing?
Well, you guys can only see my upper half. I went full on American underneath this desk. You guys don't even want to see. What is full on American mean? It means really tight shorts and cowboy boots. But we'll save that one for later. The people who are listening to this in audio, you're welcome for that. Hopefully that mental image isn't too graphic.
So if I'm not sounding 100% today, it's because I'm not. I've been off today. I've been sleeping most day because I don't know what type of man flu I've been hit with, but it's rough. I came down with it on.
No joke. We're with you on that one. We're with you on that one, Pab.
So I came down with it on Tuesday, ended up having to come home early. I pushed through work on Wednesday, but I got home Wednesday night and I've just been asleep for about 18 hours trying to recover. I was still not feeling great. So if my voice doesn't sound like it normally does, that's the reason why. So it's
different.
James, one thing I was going to say to you, and this is something that I know you've mentioned before as well, is that you were looking at like intros to your podcast. I don't know if you've heard my podcast intro. If not, it's worthwhile because I may be biased, but I think it's the best intro on the planet. So you're going to have to listen to it. So.
I really want to hear it. Can I look that up whilst we're on the air and just listen to that?
No, absolutely.
I really want to hear that. Want to hear that.
We'll wait for you. So it's on Spotify, Dental Implant Podcast.
Dental Implant Podcast. Finding an intro is actually way harder than it might seem. I went through about 5 iterations. And
really?
it got a little bit wacky at some point, at a few points. And then I thought, no, this just isn't me. Let me just make it real simple. Now it's inspired by Gary Vee's podcast intro. And it's just like, welcome to the Dentists Who Invest podcast, plain and simple, right? And that was because I basically just said, right, I like no more. I just have to keep this simple. I'm just going to have to dumb this down and just go for the easy option. So I'm intrigued to hear yours, actually. I should have listened to yours while I was still going through the iteration cycle from mine, because it might have inspired me. If it's as good as you said it, we're about to find out. I'm looking it up. My internet's a little slow. You might have to come back to me.
That's all right. So it's one because I was encouraged to start this podcast by Jazz Galati of Protruserati podcast, a Protrusive Dental podcast. And one of the things he said to me, he said, you need a solid intro. And I was like, you know what? I don't know how it sprung into my mind, but it was like, I know exactly what I'm going to do. So
I've been on a few
to those listening, we will get to the interesting stuff in a couple of minutes. Just wait.
Here we go. Okay, this is going to play any second. Zaga Protocols.
Welcome to the Dental Implant Podcast with your host.
Can you guys hear this? Can you guys hear that? Yeah, let me start it again. Wait, what?
Welcome to the Dental Implant Podcast with your host, Pav Kara, your source
Morgan
of
Freeman?
knowledge for all things related to dental implants. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned something valuable. I hope. Good evening, good morning.
What?
How's that for an intro?
I wasn't expecting that at all. Okay. All right.
Yes.
I was not expecting that. Okay, right. That was okay. I believe you. That was pretty good. Okay, hats off. Hats off. Was that your impression of Morgan Freeman, or was that like actually Morgan Freeman? I couldn't really work it out at one point.
I got an impersonator to do it, and he's really good.
Okay.
He's actually known for he's an impersonator. He does a lot of different people, and he just absolutely nailed that one. And I was just like, yeah, because he's one of my favorite actors. Shawshank Redemption's my favorite movie. So yeah.
Oh, good choice.
Okay. I'm impressed.
Okay. Right. Now that the chit chat's over, shall we get into it a little bit as well? So, James, I know that this is something that you've spoken about before. I think it was with Farhan in investing in yourself, right? So investing in yourself in terms of education, that definitely comes down to it. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on using education as an investment vehicle, because it's not just stocks, bonds. It's it's upskilling so that you can generate more, right?
Here's the thing, right? Now, I love this so much, okay, because I feel like this is something that is done wrong massively in finance. You have to think about wealth like this. Think about wealth as a sphere in front of you, okay? Now cut that sphere in half, because there's actually two components. There's the create wealth aspect and then the build wealth aspect. This is the best way to think about it, right? And until we know both of these things exist, we don't know all of our options. And actually, when you have a conversation about wealth with most people, they'll focus on either one of them inadvertently without realizing it. And here's why. Let's say you go to your FA and they'll say, okay, Mr. Smith, you got all this money coming in. You're going to put your money into this pot, this pot, this pot, and this pot. And in about 20 years' time, you'll come back and you'll have a couple million in there. And all the while, I'm going to be siphoning off these percentages, which is going to make me wealthy simultaneously. But it would never happen unless you had me, because you'd have to educate yourself in finance otherwise, and most people aren't prepared to go there. Okay? And that's the build wealth aspect, right? Now, I think people confuse investing with something that's going to make them rich tomorrow. Now, from experience, unless you're very skilled with what you do, you're a very skilled trader, which, by the way, is like 0.0001% of society and probably pretty unattainable for most people. You're not going to be someone who's going to make that level of wealth instantaneously, particularly in investing, especially in the build wealth side. The build wealth aspect is what you do with your money when you already have it. Because why would you go to the FA if you didn't have any flipping money, right? The FA tells you where to put the money, right? How to grow the money, but you have to have the money in the first place, okay? So that's building wealth. And if you go to your FA, now, by the way, this is not me bashing FAs. There's only love between me and the FAs, trust me, okay? But all I'm saying is that this is the perspective or angle that you'll get. And this is the aspect that people focus on, right? But actually, if we look at wealth with that pair of lenses, we're actually looking at it with a set of blinkers, right? Because we're only looking at half the story. Let's go back to the sphere thing that I was talking about, right? If you go to your FA and you want to be rich tomorrow, trust me, it won't happen. It'll take many years. The clue's right there in front of you. Is the FA driving about in a Lamborghini? Do they have some magic ability or formula to make wealth? Probably not. They're just investing in the markets, which consistently grow over time. So that's building wealth, right? Let's go to the sexy side, all right? Let's go to creating wealth. Okay. Now, creating wealth, part of creating wealth is going to be education. It's going to be managing your outgoings, because no matter how much money you have, you can spend it if you decide that you want to. It's going to be sales. These are the things that are going to put more money in Pav's hands tomorrow, in Bilal's hands tomorrow, in Jim's hands tomorrow. These are the things that have the scope to make you wealthy, right? There are actually 4 components to creating wealth. Right? Now, I've never actually seen this written down anywhere. These are the things that I found through time, through talking to lots of dentists, and through my own realizations, effectively. Yeah. There's 4 things that apply specifically to dentists, 4 realistic paths into which you should be channeling your energy if you want to create wealth which is the sexy side, like I say, that's going to put more money in your hands, right? The first one is accountancy, right? Because now Bilal's the accountant here, and I'm not going to take the wind out of his sails. But let's say, pure and simple, if we've got an associate that's earning 90K and they're a private dentist, and all of their wealth is going into their personal name, if they set up a limited company, then they will have the ability to halve their income tax bill over 40,000, over 50,000 pounds, right, Bilal? Because effectively, the 40,000, let's call it roughly 20K tax that you're paying on that. 40% plus national insurance is slightly off that. The figures aren't exactly accurate, but then all of a sudden you're going to pay in corporation tax, which is half that, which is 10,000, because it would be originally half of your 40,000, which is 20,000. Corporation tax is half that. Therefore, your tax bill over 50,000 halves. Bilal, have I got that correct?
Yeah, the logic is sound. Yeah,
we're looking at it with very simple terms. There's more to it than that. There's more. It's way more nuanced than that. And the thing about it is, it's not always. There's way more to it than that. And I've made it sound dreadfully simple, but effectively that opportunity is out there for someone. And guess what? You've just created that money, because it's £10,000 that would have been going out otherwise, right? So that's more money in your hand. Okay. Spend and reviewing. I hate the word budgeting. I like the word spend and reviewing. It's a bit of a euphemism, but it means the same thing. Okay. Budgeting is like, whoa, we're getting a little bit defensive. Like, I don't want to spend. I want to enjoy my life. And you know what? Go and enjoy your life. But chances are, in most people, there's some leaky buckets on their income, okay? And take this from the person who, when he audited his personal account, I realized I was spending £1,000 on berries from the supermarket every year, okay? £1,000, okay? I can see you furrowing your brows, okay? £3.50, £3.50 3 times a week, times it by 52, okay? And by the way, that's pre-tax. So add the tax on, it's over £1,000. Okay. Yeah. And it adds up. And that's stunning. And I couldn't believe my flipping eyes. Imagine how I'm the one who flipping did it. Imagine how I felt. Yeah. Okay. It can be done. Now I get my frozen from flipping Aldi, right? You want to put money in your hands, identify those things. And the silly direct debits you've forgotten about, things on current accounts and stuff like that, right? The third one, now I am going somewhere with this, and it is coming back to your point. Okay, Pav, I am coming back to your point. The third one is sales, right? If a dentist gets better at sales, you can literally go to work on Monday and make more money. And guess what? You can do that for the rest of your life. The main thing that's holding people back is what's up here, their limiting beliefs when it comes to sales. And for me, I used to think, what the heck is this? What's this hippie mumbo jumbo, limiting beliefs and all of this stuff? But when someone points it out to you, it's really powerful. And that, by the way, I'm the person who didn't believe in that stuff at all, right? Now, to close the loop and come back to what you, Pav, the fourth thing is business, right? Now, whether you're an associate or a principal, you're still a business, in my view, because you're self-employed, because you're the business of you, right?
Yeah.
If you wake up and you're more efficient in the morning, blah, 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 chances are that you'll go in and make more money in the day, just like a business, whether you're an associate or a principal, okay? What's one of the ways that you can be more efficient? Is through education and ideas, because success is a multiple of ideas multiplied by execution. If you have 0 ideas and all the execution, that's still a whole lot of 0 in terms of success. If you've got a few ideas and a huge amount of execution, you've got some more success. If you've got all the ideas, but you've got 0 execution, you're also never going to be successful. If you've got all the ideas and all the execution, that's when the magic happens right there. And that's where education comes from. And for me, like, honestly, I don't even want to share how much I've spent on courses, dentistry, inside and outside of dentistry, over the years. And all I will say is that each and every one of them gave me an ROI, because I used every single thing that I got on there, right? And those were the things that were able to put way more money in my hands than what I would have done if I would have been building wealth. Purely focusing on the building wealth thing, which is what we were talking about earlier. Creating wealth, you want to make more money tomorrow, that's where we should be looking. And a huge component of that is education. And for me, that was one of the quickest ways that I was able to create more wealth in the short term and help more people and get more satisfaction from life. So in essence, long story short, when you know all your options, is it going to be A, B, C, or D? You can actually see that out of all of those options, education is the thing that can actually give you limitless returns over time, not invest in your money. Seriously.
Yeah. I like that. I really like that. So it's, I mean, on that same thing as well. That's always been my philosophy. This is one of the reasons why I've studied really, really hard. You know, I've always been open and honest about my past. But a few years ago, I went through the worst time of my life. I went through bankruptcy and a separation, and I was for quite a while. I was suicidal as well. And one of the things that kept me going was education, because I found that when I was studying, when I was reading a textbook, that I'd go into flow state. So I'd be so engrossed with that I could read a textbook in the day. And then that was a day that I wasn't then sat around, you know, and having this weight on my shoulders. So I accelerated my learning through bad times because it was a coping mechanism for me to get out afterwards as well. But in addition to that as well, is what it's done is it's so for me, there's two components to it. Firstly, there's the education aspect that gives you the knowledge, but then you need the clinical exposure to actually be able to execute those skills to build it into muscle memory. That's really important. If you just have the theory but none of the practical, is you don't build the muscle memory. And what's happened is it's now pushed me to a point where I can now execute treatment that a lot of other people can't do. And you end up in a more niche market. And the more niche market that you have, then the less inadvertent competition there is. Not that there's that much competition, because there's so much business out there for everybody. But I'm just finding that, you know, I'm enjoying the cases that I'm getting in now. So my career is purely limited to implants now. We get a lot of patients who refer to us or come for us for second opinions, where they're like, "Oh, I've been told I need quad zygos," and you look at it and going, "No, we can get pterygoids in the back, maybe one zygo on this side, and then we can get the other implants in." Or, you know, if we need to do zygos, it's just, I'm at a point now where I'm that energized about my work that I absolutely love it. And this is one of the reasons why I'm helping other dentists to do the same, right? Because I want them to be able to, you know, accelerate their career, because I'm doing implants for a very personal reason. So in my grandfather's later years, he wanted me to give him implants because he had removable dentures, and I couldn't do it. And he got upset because he couldn't chew properly, and he had to go into another room to eat, so he wasn't with the family. So I never got to help him. So everybody that I help now is in his memory. And then in addition to that is, if I help other dentists help other people, that just magnifies for me. That's why I do this type of stuff, right? That's the reason why I love it. So circling back to everything, and this is where I'm going to get Bilal's opinion on this now as well. So Bilal, one of the things that I found over the years is, particularly when you start on training on implants, you know it's going to be expensive, but you don't realize exactly how expensive it's going to be. Because what ends up happening is you end up doing an entry-level course and you think, "Oh, I will be able to do everything." And that's not the case at all. And what happens is you very quickly hit a ceiling, and then you've got to do another course, invest in more equipment, and you hit another ceiling. So it's very much a stepwise progression. And for me, probably over the years, just on implants, I've spent $200K easily, you know, because it's, you know, a master's degree is 30 grand, right? It's 10 grand a year for 3 years. It's even more than that now. Your basic implantology course is 10 grand. You know, your motor's 2 grand. You do a sinus lift course, that's 3 grand. You know, all of this stuff adds up. Then you've got traveling time away from work. So what I'd appreciate your thoughts on is, what's the best way to structure this? And what's the best way to structure it, not only in terms of how it works in relation to taxes, but what we should do to make sure it's viable for the business as well. Because in my opinion, you know, it's something that I've mentioned before, is if you're doing an implant course but you haven't got the clientele in your practice who can afford to have implants doing, should you be looking to move? Should you be, you know, so I'd appreciate your opinion on not only the tax side of the education and the equipment, but how to implement it into your business as well. Because otherwise people are just throwing money away.
No, that's fantastic intro there. And I really appreciate being invited on. Everything you guys have said resonates beautifully. And just sort of an intro into myself before we sort of jump into the meat and bones is the educational side of things is chartered accountant. It's a postgrad qualification. It's equivalent to a master's. So whatever degree you've done, you've then got to go do 3 years worth of training with a recognized training provider. So someone has to say, we will take this person on as a trainee, knowing we're going to educate them for the next 3 years. Then you become chartered. That's the earliest stage you can become chartered. It's 3 years on-the-job training. And your training has to be very specific. So I'm ACCA qualified, and I have been for a number of years, but then you do the 14 exams, and then after that, you've got to hit 14 objectives. And someone has to sign that off that says, this is what you've done. And I didn't start accountancy until I was 22. So I left college at 16 because, quite frankly, I left college at 18, but at 16, I knew I couldn't go on to university because we couldn't afford to go to university. So we had family situation, whatever it was. It meant I couldn't go. But I also didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to become a clinical psychologist. That's what I was studying towards. So I studied psychology at A level. I was good at that. That's what I wanted to do. When I left, I was helping my dad run his business, and I was always quite adept with numbers. I was always very good with numbers, and we had a butcher's, and I treated that as a business. It was my business, my family business, and I made sure at 16 I was doing all the invoicing. I was making sure we had throughput analysis. So when we get a whole carcass in and it gets portioned out, how much am I paying my butchers to do that? And then I couldn't drive at the time, getting in a van, then going to deliver it and doing all the invoicing, and then realizing. So we shut the business down. I wanted to become an accountant. I knew I was good with numbers, and that's what I then did. So that was a very long road, and I then picked the right jobs. So on a training contract, you paid absolutely peanuts. It was about 18 grand, but you have to be in the right position to then get the next jobs. So I did a training contract and then went on to group finance at National Express, where there was a team of 6 of us looking after £2.2 billion worth of revenue. And I remember rolling forward. So my background is the core technical accounting, so the accounting standards, how to make sure the money flows through entities the right way, and presenting that up, and then writing the shareholder report. So everything I did was scrutinized. So Deloitte would come in and check every single number I created. So that's the approach that I take to businesses today. But your generic accountant, Mr. ABZ, Accounting Limited, anyone can call themselves an accountant, and you guys could open up a practice tomorrow, and HMRC wouldn't bat an eyelid. So this is where the key distinction comes from: is an accountant isn't a protected term, chartered accountant is. So that's really important. So when you're taking that on, and then we look at the educational side of things, what do we study? So people seem to think accounting, tax. It actually forms a very small basis of what we actually study. Most of what we study is business strategy. Tax is a byproduct of strategy that says if you lay out your foundations and you approach it with the mindset that I don't want you paying a penny more in tax than you have to, then it just happens. So the thing that everyone should be focusing on is the planning side of things, the business side of things, is what do I actually want to achieve? Where do I want to be in my career? And then assume, working with your accountant, that the efficiency will be along the way. But if you're treating it as I'm just going to go do this thing, I see my accountant once a year, I see him in December, I pay my taxes in January, or her in December, and I pay my taxes in January, then you're wasted 2 years. So if we just use sort of the current tax year as an example, we've just finished up 21-22, we're in tax year 22-23. Most people won't even start the process until December. So that entire year, you don't even know what you've made, what taxes you've got to pay, and then how what you've spent impacts your tax bill. So you're in for a very nasty surprise. And then secondly to that is you've lost most of the current year you're in. So in terms of planning, in terms of efficiency, in terms of all of that, is when were you planning on sitting down and doing all of that? And when did you carve out your plan that says, and implantology is fantastic. And I think you've something that we deal with quite a lot of implant surgeons, and it's a rabbit hole. And once you go down that rabbit hole, you can't flirt with it. It doesn't work. You either go into a whole hog knowing that the first step is going to cost you 20 grand at least. Just that first entry, then you've got to buy all the equipment, then you've got to get your specialists, like you say, your sinus lift and everything like that. That says, at what point do you decide your level? At what point do you decide this is where I'm at, this is where I'm happy? Realistically, never. You'll want to keep pushing yourself. And as James said, the educational thing is what's going to make you the most money over your career. So that's really the intro side of things in sort of me and what I do. And we only deal with dentists. So our entire practice is geared towards dentists. And solely at the planning side, that says when we take a client on, we will do a full detailed conversation. What sort of dentistry do you practice? Why do you practice that? What do you want to do? What does the next 12 months look like for you? What does the next 24 months look like for you? What have you got on the horizon? And we really challenge our clients when they say to us, we want to spend money on a course because, and it sounds terrible, but I'm going to say it as it is. Is it for business or is it for ego? You know, are you doing it because you want the letters after your name, or does it meet the plan? And James uses the term ROI. Most people approach ROI as ROCE, Rocky, or return on capital employed. Return on investment is very much the same way people look at buy-to-lets. That says, I'm going to put 50 grand into this buy-to-let. It's going to give me £700 a month rental income in perpetuity. That's how return on investment is generally calculated. Within dentistry, we should be looking at return on capital employed. Is I'm going to put 50 grand into this. When do I get the 50 grand back? Because if that return on capital employed is 18 months, then we know anything after the 18-month point, from month 19 onwards, I'm in profit. It's paid me back my 50K, now from month 19 onwards. Now, when you're approaching your training courses, at what point do you decide you want to level up? Now, have you hit the level you want to be at, that then, you've recovered the training course, and you want to move on to the next, or are you just going to go hell for leather and trying to get as much done in the shortest period of time, but will your experience meet your qualification? And that's a whole different ballgame. So the tax side of things, and we'll go through that in a bit more detail probably as the flow of this conversation continues, but it really boils down to, I think, if you focus on tax, then you're focusing on the wrong number. And as James says, as long as you focus on the top line number, a big tax bill is a nice problem to have. A big tax bill you weren't aware of is a bad problem. So let's make you aware of that number as soon as possible and mitigate where you can. But like James says, having those conversations early with the right people will tell you that. Now, James won't badmouth IFAs. I might, but we don't sell a product. When I hear, I'm only joking. Yeah, we don't sell a product. We're your advocate. So in that scenario, James says, for what could I be saving? There's way too many variables to jump through this, but one of the biggest reasons you go limited is because you can control how much money you take out in your company. So if you earn 100 grand a year and you're a sole trader at the moment, you will pay about £33,000 in tax. It's just all it is what it is. The first £12,500 tax free, up to 50k paying 20%, then anything over 50k paying 40%, up to 150k, then it's 45% thereafter. National insurance rates have just changed, so it's 10.25% up to 50k, 3.25% thereafter in perpetuity. When you operate via a limited company, it's a different thing altogether. So, PAV Limited is a separate legal entity to PAV. So PAV Limited now earns all the money, earns 100k, on which you draw a very modest salary, which then reduces your tax further. So you then pay a flat rate of corporation tax, so it's 19%. Currently, there's murmurings of it rising to 25%. When, how, why, when that will look like, we don't know, but it's currently 19%. Once that 19% tax has been paid for, in this scenario, would be about 17k in tax. There's 73.5 grand left over in the limited company. Well, where does that go? So if you take it all out, you're about 2 grand better off. Now, is it worth it for that? It depends on you. Worth is intrinsic, value is intrinsic. But if we said the most tax efficient amount to take out your company is 50k, so you've taken a very small salary, you take the rest out of dividends. Your self-assessment now shows 50k, and on that you will save about 13 grand in tax. So 13 grand in tax, that's more liquidity that you've now got to put elsewhere. That says, do you want to accelerate your learning? Now you've got 13 grand more liquidity to play with to now invest back into yourself. Now investments, like James rightly says, are intrinsic. No, it doesn't always have to be cash. It doesn't always have to be money. It's what gets you value. And that's the bit that we always seek out is what's your reason? What are you trying to achieve? And we tag everything back to that. So in that scenario, you take 50 grand out, you've saved 13 grand in tax, there's now £33,500 sat in the limited company. Well, what do you want to do with it? Does it all go back into investments? Do you go buy machinery, equipment? What do you want to do with it? Ironically, wherever you buy your machinery, you get the same tax saving on the side, but we're talking about liquidity, we're talking about investing. It says, what leaves you more cash overall? Well, it depends on how much you're going to spend on this. And there's never a catch-all answer to any of this. And then what sort of expenses will you be incurring? Now, not all expenses, not everything you spend will be tax deductible. It's just not the way, unfortunately, it's just not the way it works. And we had a client yesterday who was having to travel quite a lot, was spending about £800-900 a week on travel and accommodation because he was up in the northeast and he was traveling down south. It's traveling to a regular place of work. You can't claim that as an expense. And it's a bitter pill to swallow, but if you make someone aware of it early on, then it's fine. Then we talk about expenses. What qualifies as an expense? How do expenses work? But before that, I'll let you guys interject on anything I've covered already.
No, I mean that's. I was going to say it makes sense, but it's new information to me. Again, I'm just the type of person where it's just like, historically, it's just like numbers are just like, I'll leave that to my accountant to deal with. And I've made the mistake in the past of having somebody who was just, tick boxing and sending it into HMRC as opposed to having somebody who was so I've moved to a chartered accountant recently, and he's doing he's doing a really good job for me. So how would it? So obviously it's now starting to become clear that there are benefits to having a limited company. But let's say you don't have a limited company, or you do, and you're either starting into the a dental implant journey, or you want to progress further. How does investing at that stage in your education or equipment, how does it impact taxes? Because again, this is something that we joked about. I think, Bilal, I saw this on one of your reels on Instagram. I'm sure it was last week or something like that, where people think that, if you've got a 20 grand tax bill, you spend 20 grand on expenses and you've got your tax bill zero. And you were like, that's not the case. And I was like, what do you mean that's not the case? That's news to me. I'm 43 years old. I've just learned this now. So how does it impact whether you're a limited company or whether you're a sole trader?
Good question. So the first thing is we as a firm of accountants, we bring our clients kicking and screaming right up to the conversation with us. So we refuse to sign anything off until you say, I get it. So we will go through the numbers, really. We do all of that. And we want you to understand, because the more you get familiar with your numbers, the better decision making you make. Now, with regard to expenses, and again, sort of sidestepping limited company sole trader for now, is, and I live and breathe this, so it seemed only logical to me. But I think the main proponent to this is American TikTokers and your Grant Cardones that says, I had a tax bill. I went and bought a jet for £100 million. I paid no tax. Well, brilliant. You've got no cash either now. So brilliant. You crippled yourself trying to save on tax. I mean, it makes no sense. But there's so many people on social media doing that. A lot of my clients send me those TikToks and say, Bilal, how can we do this? And we explain to them, oh, we didn't understand that. And that's what led me to make that reel, is whatever your numbers are, ignore the numbers for now. They're not going to be accurate because the tax bandings and thresholds, they are the way they are. But let's say you make 100 grand profit. So you've gone out and you've earned 100 grand as an associate. Yeah. And your tax bill on the back of that is 40 grand. If you have £40,000 worth of expenses, it doesn't reduce your tax bill to nil. What it does do, it takes your 100 grand down to 60k, and you pay tax on the 60k on the same bandings, which is first 12.5 grand tax free, up to 50k with 20%, and then that 10k between 50k and 60k will be taxed at 40%. So just by spending money, you will cripple yourself. You'll bankrupt yourself by trying to not pay tax. And it's a very short-sighted thing to do. Now, how expenses work, there's a minefield. Some of the rules are contradictory. Some of the rules you really have to know specifically. But in this environment, and the biggest thing we're discussing today is the training courses. Now, if you're learning a brand new skill, doesn't relate to your business or anything like that, you cannot claim that as an expense. If you're enhancing an existing skill, then you can claim that as an expense. Now, when you have something like a master's, it's difficult to say that's a business expense, because are you learning a brand new skill, or are you enhancing an existing skill, or how does a master's help you help your business at all, or is it purely an academic pursuit? So that in itself is a challenge. Now, we as a firm of accountants, depending on a case-by-case basis, we will go to a second set of accountants, so accountants for accountants. These are the type of accountants that only live in dark rooms, that only speak to other accountants because that's the only form of English they know. They cannot speak to the general public, but you have to ask a very specific set of questions. So we will present it to them that says, look, if this is erring on our too grey for us, we will go to them and say, look, this is the scenario, this is what's happened. Can we claim it or not? They will say yes. They will say no. But our goal is to try and get it through, but being factual and honest, because we're not trying to deceive anyone. We're definitely not trying to deceive anyone. But the goal here is, if they come back and say yes, you can, and then HMRC later down the line say no, you can't, they indemnify their response. So we go after them. You don't suffer it. And But if you can, we say you can, then we'll live and die by our decision. But if we don't think we can, then very much a no. But then this is where the challenge comes into it that says, if you're currently a general dentist and you want to become an implant surgeon and you need to go on an implant course, is that enhancing existing skill or are you learning a brand new skill? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. See, I've heard it argued both ways before, because we get taught the absolute basics of implants at BDS. You don't get taught much on it, but you get taught this is what an implant is. When people got it's an option, so I have had some people argue, well, I already know about implants, so I'm enhancing an existing skill. And then I've heard other people claim, well, you know what? You're not placing implants, so you know about them, but there's a non-dentist can know about them just by doing a quick Google search. So I don't have an answer to that. Everything that I'm doing now is obviously enhancing a new skill. But I've heard it argued both ways. But I think the argument that you're enhancing an existing skill where you haven't done your basic course, I think that's quite a weak argument, to be honest with you.
And you're absolutely right. It's an argument because in the UK, and this is where, again, I get frustrated with TikTok finance gurus, is the Americans run something called Sarbanes-Oxley. Sarbanes-Oxley, the legal system there is the letter of the law. If the law says you cannot eat apples at work, you can't eat apples at work. But you can eat pears, you can eat oranges, you can eat satsumas, you can eat pineapples, or anything like that. In the UK, if it says you can't eat apples at work, then it also means you shouldn't really be eating any fruit in the UK. So it really, in the UK, we apply something called the spirit of the law. What is it trying to say? Could it have covered every variable when it was set out? No, but you knew what it was saying, so stop being silly. In America, it's different. In America, if the black and white text says that, that's the thing you can't do, but you can do everything around it. So this is where we have to sort through the mud and really say, we have to ignore that and don't speak to someone who knows what they're talking about, which is why having someone that's a dental specialist is really important, because this is where we then go to HMRC, we go to bat for you that says, no, this is why we think it's the case. And we will go back and forth with them. And, all our clients, we pay for indemnity for all our clients. It says if we have to go back and forth with HMRC and we did your accounts, we don't bill you, we claim that off our insurance because we knew what we were doing at the time. We've got the documentation set up. And again, my background is I'm almost waiting to be scrutinized for everything I did anyway. So we take the right documentation and everything like that. Masters is a difficult one because there's a separate set of rules for masters qualifications and how that works. The rules are slightly different for limited companies, for sole traders, but they're massively convoluted. So probably another conversation for another time. But then the conversation then becomes, if like in your case, Pav, is if you've spent 200 grand on enhancing your skills, but we can't claim the first qualification or the first course, and we can claim everything else as enhancements, then that works as well. So if you've never done anything on implants and you can't realistically say we did it, then the first bit you don't claim, and the rest of it you can because you're enhancing an existing skill set. So there's sort of swings and roundabouts on that. But I think the biggest one for me, and not enough is publicized about this, is it's very difficult for your accountant to get in trouble for anything they do for you. And it's terrible. It's terrible because whether you're a sole trader or limited company, you've outsourced your responsibility. So in the eyes of the law, in the eyes of HMRC, you as the business owner, be it sole trader or limited company, have to sign those accounts off. You own those accounts. You outsource them to an accountant, then you need to make sure what they're putting through is correct. Because a lot of dentists that we deal with will say, yeah, it's fine, just sign them. No, you need to check it because you're responsible for this. Is if they start putting things, mortgage payments, sofa payments, all that kind of stuff, which we've seen it happen, is you're responsible for that. And then if we take you on as a client and your last 3 years of accounts have been bogus, we will draw a line under that that says, look, if anything comes on the back of that, we suggest you change them because they're not right. And if the client says, no, we won't change them, either we disengage and say, look, we won't take that on, because it opens up our entire client base to that level of scrutiny. Because if we get tarred with a brush that we don't want, then we will say no to that business. But conversely, if it's a little bit and we say, look, fine, you don't want to do it, you're going to put everything right. You didn't know what you were doing, but if it comes about, we will charge you to put that right because you knew what you did wasn't right. So that's a separate thing. I mean, that's that's the other thing that you've got to consider is do you know enough about what you're signing off? Because you're responsible for it. And as a director of a company, a limited company, the legal responsibility is even greater because you have something called a fiduciary responsibility. Now, you heard about directors going to prison for stuff that they should have done or didn't do. Directors have a legal responsibility to act in the best interests of the shareholder. Now, most limited companies are the smaller size. Shareholder and director is going to be the exact same person. But in the eyes of the law, total separate people. You're a shareholder. You're the shareholder. You're in the company. You employ directors to run the company for you. Now, if we use a scenario that says PAV owns PAV Limited, is a shareholder of PAV Limited, and employs me to run the company, and I start doing some shady things and start putting some weird or wonderful things through the accounts, I could go to prison for that. As a director, I have a fiduciary responsibility. So, and again, the seriousness of the legal structures is really important. And we stress that importance to our clients. That says you have to be all over this. You need to understand why and be ready to question why have we done this, why haven't we done this, and why have we claimed this course and why haven't we claimed this course? Why have we treated your equipment purchases slightly differently? Because the way you buy equipment is treated differently in your accounts. And again, where does that show up in the accounts? How do you know what that looks like? And it's really important for you to get all over it, which goes back to what I was saying right at the start, is if you don't have the baseline knowledge, then your forecast is out of whack already, because you need to have that baseline understanding of what you spent, when you spend it, and why you spent it, and then forecast the next 12, 24 months to understand where you want to end up.
James, what are your thoughts?
Well, there's one thing that you said earlier, Bilal, and it was like you were basically, it was actually before you talked just then, it was about 10 minutes ago, and you were basically saying, at what point do we put money into investing in ourselves, and at what point do we actually tuck some away and maybe put it in the markets, and where does all this money go, right? And that's something that people say to me all the time. And I feel like a lot of people think that there's going to be a magic ratio, like you do this, and this, But actually, it's a very personal question. Because if we think about finance, the clue's in the name, personal finance. It's personal. And every individual's answer is going to be different. And the easiest way that I've ever found to circumvent that, or at least have some sort of structure to it, is to think about something called your buckets. Right? So your buckets are, you've got all this money coming in, and you're thinking to yourself, of this £1,000, of this £10,000 a month, let's use £10,000 a month, nice and round. We've got £1,000 that's tucked away for a tax, and it'll probably be more than that if you're earning that level of money, but you catch my drift. £1,000 goes into your tax bucket. £1,000 goes into your living expenses bucket, £2,000 goes into your education bucket, and the rest goes into your investing. And that sounds so simple, but you know the number of people that actually do that? Like this, yeah? And it's the easiest thing in the whole world to do. The reason why so few people do it is because it requires discipline, But what it means is, here's the thing. Every single pound that you have in your bank account that is not allocated towards something specific is actually a waste of money. And here's why, okay? Because if you're just saving up for the sake of it, then the government is actually taking that wealth back from you via inflation every single hour of every single day, right? And here's the thing, because every single extra pound that they create devalues the pound that you have in your bank account. So if that cash is just sitting around listless, think about it. If you spend 1,000 hours working for that money and the rate of inflation is 10%, then effectively the records only show that you worked 900 hours by the end of the year. Now, you still work those 1,000 hours. Imagine if someone said to you, actually, I'm not going to pay you for 3 weeks' work. What would you say? You'd say, no way in hell, right? That's how ludicrous it is. That literally happens.
That's putting it politely.
Yeah, and that's politely, right? No one would ever stand for that. You'd be utterly indignant, right? But that happens under the bonnet, you can't see that happening, sinister, it's happening in this way that you don't even realize it, right? That's happening every hour of every day, right? If you're storing your wealth primarily in capital, the capital is sitting listlessly in your bank account, you have way more than what you realistically need to sustain yourself. Should you lose your job, 6 months is a good rule of thumb, 6 months of expenses. Everything over and above that doesn't have a home, whether that home is a bucket or some form of investment, is actually wealth that you're losing perpetually. But because it's happening so subtly, it's very easy to get totally complacent about it. Use the buckets. Interesting way of looking at it, right? Every single second you don't have a bucket is actually costing you wealth.
So
Yeah, I like that.
Interestingly, just on that, James, I had a planning session with a client last night where we did we didn't call it buckets, but I like that terminology. I'm going to use that going forward. We did a similar exercise. So when we went through his setup, his bucket, so to speak, so we had some debt repayments. He had some money he wanted to put aside for a rainy day fund, and he had some investing goals that he wanted to make. And he had spoken to an IFA, came back and said, "Look, I don't fully understand what they're trying to sell me, but can we have a chat? Look, we don't give financial advice, but you can speak to us anecdotally, and we can give you the pros and cons, the ins and outs for why you would do what you want, why you would do what you want to do." So in that scenario, when we went through all the numbers, in his head, he had, I want to take this much out of my company each month because then I can put this much into my ISA, this much into debt repayments, and this gets me to where we want to get it to. We sort of phased that out over the next 12 months for his tax year. And then we worked out, well, he didn't need to take that much money out because by October, he's repaid his debts. So he can step off how much money he's extracting. And then when we went through the numbers again, we were like, well, and then sort of just to sort of the conversation back and forth is, so I can't say you shouldn't invest in an ISA or you should invest in stocks and shares through your limited company. But by going through the mechanics of the pros and cons, his long-term goals with it and how he would take the money out in the future, he had decided that investing in stocks and shares through the company was a better option for him. Now, through that entire conversation, he'd saved himself about $5,000. And that was an hour's conversation that we had last night. And you think, well, $5,000 for an hour's work. And he's educated himself. So now he goes to his IFA. Now he says, look, this is what we want to do. So now he's going to his IFA with a very direct set of rules that says, these are the rules that I want you to adhere to. Tell me the best product to now invest in. And now he's in control of the conversation. And I think that to have that empowering is really important. And I do the same thing with courses. I do the same thing with training courses. So I will challenge my clients. So none of my clients will spend a large sum of money without speaking to me first. So we have a messaging service that says, I'm about to spend $16,000 on this course. I will fall out of my seat and we'll book him and say, why are you spending $16,000 on this course? What is it giving you back? And where does that meet up on the plan? And how does that fill that bucket? And I think that's powerful phrase, and I'm gonna nick that going forward. But we do the exact same thing that says, well, it's a course that I want to do because it helps me do this. And I mean, my wife's a dentist, and she keeps saying she wants to do the next level of facial aesthetics because she does cosmetic dentistry, and it allow her to do tear trough and non-surgical rhinoplasty. But I think, and the challenge I've made on that is, of the money you've spent so far, have you even recuperated that first bit yet? Which we wouldn't know, but I'm getting inquiries for this thing. Well, then your marketing's out of skew then, because you're not marketing the services you currently have. Your training is dictated by your inbound inquiries, and how do you know your client base? Your request, because I think Pav, you said it right at the start, is if you want to embark on this route, but the practice you currently work at doesn't have the clientele that you want, you now need to move practices, not take on another course. Forces yourself into a pigeonhole. And I have this conversation with my friends all the time, and it frustrates me. Is my parents came over from Pakistan when they were 17 and 18 years old, and I'm here by some freak of luck that said two people of different parts of Pakistan decided to meet and decided to come over to the UK. And all my mates, we grew up within sort of 3 mile radius, haven't moved out from there. And I went, our parents moved thousands of miles, and you can't move 20 miles out to get a better opportunity, and then you're constantly complaining about the work that you do, and it's not paying you enough money. But what have you done for that? Where's your mass migration happened? Where's your move to London happened? Where's your move to Manchester? Wherever the opportunities, where's that happened? But you're trying to sort of upskill yourself in this sort of boundary, but it's not the right thing for you. So are you spending money on courses to try and be the best, the biggest fish in a small pond, or do you need to move ponds?
Yeah.
Can I say one tiny thing on top of that, right? Going back to the create wealth thing that we were talking about. If you said to someone, actually, you can have £5,000 from an hour's conversation, you can do an hour and basically generate £5,000. You remember how I said that accountancy plays into the creating wealth side? wow, what sort of flipping investment is going to give you a return like that? Yeah. But yeah, everybody's flipping, chasing mirages and chasing illusions over here, trying to invest their money, but they're not actually looking at the efficiencies that could be generating them more money in the first place or creating them wealth. Yeah. And that's what I see so often. And it's about taking everybody's focus, taking it away from the thing that we all think is going to make us rich, and actually saying, listen, as a dentist, these are the 4 places that you should be looking. And all of a sudden, you know where to put your energy, right? And there's a brilliant example right there, just what you said.
So if I had hair, I'd probably pulled it out by now. Is I'm dead against discounting, and I hate discounting because you spent 200 grand to get to where you are, and if someone's going to ask you for a discount, then they don't respect the work that you or the effort it's taken for you to get there. And same with dentistry, you take on masses of debt and personal sacrifice, and as an associate, you're very quick, not you personally, but they're very quick to discount. So when we do the planning exercise, we start from the bottom up. That says, where do you want to be in 2 years? What goal? I'm getting married. I want to buy a house. I want to buy a new car. I want to do this. I want to save enough money to do my squat practice, so on and so forth. We work backwards from that. I says, fine. What sort of practice you want to buy? Let's say the number's 100 grand, whatever it is. Let's say the number's 100 grand, and let's say it's going to take us 2.5 years to get there. Yeah, and we work backwards from that. That says, right, we can work out the correct structure for you now. That says, if all your work is going to be private and we're 2.5 years away from where you want to be, then going limited is a good option because you're not gonna trip yourself over trying to achieve something. So let's say we go limited, fine. Now we know what the tax position is. Then we work backwards. What are your overhead costs? That says, your GDC, your indemnity, your training courses, plan for courses, any marketing, any upskilling, any equipment that you need to buy, and then that takes us down to the variable costs. That says, of the treatments you do, what costs are attributed per treatment. And then you work that out, and then you work out the top number that says, well, based on all of that, you need to make this number. Because if you don't make that number, then 100 grand is not going to fall out the other side. And then you say, every time you discount, it pushes that goal away. So now do you want to discount or do you want to push the goal away? And then if you want to spend money on this course, what does it do to the So if you're going to spend 16 grand on this course or 20 grand on this course, what does it do to the end number? Does it push it out or does it bring it forward? And if it's pushing it out, is it the right thing to do? And I can't answer that question. That's where you go back to speak to your peers and you reevaluate your goals. That says, well, maybe this course isn't the right course for me. Maybe there's another course out there. And I think people get paralyzed by the numbers that says, I'll do the 16 grand course before I do the 20 grand course because it's 4 grand cheaper. But the 20 grand course might bring that 100 grand goal in 6 months. So there's a direct correlation between 4 grand extra and six months time saved to get to the end goal, which was worth it. And that's where it's very intrinsic. And I think this is what I've spent a decade doing with big businesses. This is entirely what I've done with big businesses. Now, when we set our budgets up, we set them up in September for the year ahead. And generally they run Jan to December. And, there's extenuating circumstances, COVID. How could we have planned for COVID? There's no way we're going to plan for COVID in the planning session. But how do we react to that? That says, by doing the planning, by doing the forecasting, you can then pull your levers. That says, of all my fixed costs that I had planned in, what are the absolute essentials for me to continue working? In a downturn, in a down economy, and things like that, what were the nice to haves? And the first thing people will sort of strip out is the training. They think, well, is it the right thing? Because the more you focus your niche, the more money you'll make. So is it the right thing to do? But then if you plan for it, and then you sort of work backwards with the plan that says, well, I needed 80 grand to live off. I probably don't need 80 grand to live off. I'm not going to get that new car. Instead, I only need 60 grand to live off, for instance. Well, now you've still got that 20 grand to spend on the course.
Dude, half the time is keeping up appearances, and I can't say I'm an angel either. You know what I mean? I really can't. I'm not going to name names, but I've seen some people earning 300K a year, but, they spend 260 on their lifestyle, Now that does include school fees and things like that. And you're just like, you want to trim some fat off. Look at the expenses. Out of 260 going out the door, there's got to be something there somewhere, But then those people, now this is me saying it, I'm saying this with total love, and it comes from education. These same people will come and they'll say, I want to grow my money though. I want to create more by building wealth. And I'm like, no. Before we do that, let's look at the easiest way you're going to make more money. You as an individual is trimming off the fat, is a bit of spending reviewing, but no one's interested in that, or they're certainly less interested anyway. But yeah, you can put so much money in your hand with that perspective. Those four things are so powerful.
So there's a couple of themes that I've picked up on, and firstly, Bilal, you're talking about discounting. So I don't discount at all ever, and in fact, my fees are quite a bit higher than average. But that's because I know I'm good at what I do, right? It's last year I placed 2,000 implants. You build up a lot of muscle memory doing that, and occasionally I'll get a patient coming through the door and then turn around and say, waving a piece of paper, saying, "Oh, guy down the road can do my implants at this cost. What can you?" I don't even look at it. I go, "Hang on." I said, "Let me stop you right there. If you're interested in cheap, you're in the wrong place." I said, "I don't even need to look at that paper to tell you that what I'm going to charge you is probably going to be more than that." I said, "If you're interested in cheap, you're going to waste your time with me."
And on that, Pav, real quick, and on that, you've probably found this yourself. Let's say you were trying to beat that person, race to the bottom, right? The thing about implants is, and the thing about dental treatment is that it sometimes doesn't go to plan. That is the nature of the beast. You can do everything perfectly, right? All of a sudden, you've discounted that treatment. I'm only saying this because I've done this before and I learned the hard way, right? And I hope anyone listening to this doesn't make the same mistake as me, right? Then all of a sudden, that patient thinks, well, that guy cut corners, didn't he? Because the thing didn't work. And they get totally the wrong end of the stick. You think you're doing them a favor, and it's the total opposite. Total opposite. And that's how the patient perceives it. And we think to ourselves, oh, we're being Mr. Nice Guy, Mrs. Nice Girl, whatever, yeah? And that's how the patient can sometimes perceive it, but they don't know that things can go not to plan, even if everything goes completely smoothly from the dentist perspective.
And we've only had it a couple of times, is the clients that have given us the most grief and the most hassle are the ones we've discounted, and which is why we don't do it. We'll never do it. And they've caused us no because I think they don't value the service anymore.
Yeah. I think taking half a step back, and I'm going to try and wrap this up soon because my fever's kicking and I'm burning up. I need to take more medication. Is that being a bit more philosophical about this now is one thing we've all spoken about is taking the ego out of it. Okay. So James, you said taking your ego out of it so that, you don't have to keep up with the Joneses and you know exactly where your money's going. So it's not going to be wasted. Right. I've spoken about keeping your ego out of it because, I get some people who turn around and say to me, "Pav, can you teach me how to do sinus lifts?" Like, yeah, fine, not a problem. How many inquiries are you getting? You get some people that say, "I'll get one a week." It's like, fine, you're going to build up that skill quite quickly. And you get other people that turn around and say, "Well, there was 2 people who might have been suitable for sinuses last year." You think to yourself, if you go to your indemnity and turn around and say to them, you want to start doing sinuses, first thing that they do is double your indemnity. If you're doing 2 a year, that's then an ego thing. And I'll turn around and say to them, let me teach you how to do simpler implants more efficiently and have fewer problems with them. And that's going to increase your bottom line. When you get to the point when you're doing this many sinuses, then we can come in, when you're getting this many inquiries, then we can come in and we can do some more training for you. So in that context, it's taking your ego out of it in that, that you understand the dynamic that you're in. And then, Bilal, you'd mentioned as well, taking your ego out of it, that you're not just doing courses for the sake of doing it, and it's reflected in your business plan as well. The second thing that I'd noticed that we all had in common as well, it comes down to planning. It comes down to planning what you want to do with your money. It comes down to planning your business over the next 12, 18, 24 months, and having that link in with planning your education and how you want to do it as well. So if any one of those is not planned properly, it's just going to be, I'll throw money at this, I'll throw it. And then that's when people run into problems. That's when they'll do what I did and spend way too much money and not understand why it's not working. Yeah. So, I don't know about you guys, but those are the 2 kind of like common themes that I felt like that we all had.
All I was going to say is, if you earn $1 million, you can spend $1 million. That's it. Because once you beat the Joneses, there's going to be the Smiths. Then there's going to be the Phillips. Then there's going to be the Bezoses and the flipping whoever else there is. There's always going to be someone, right? So why play an unending game? You can never win. There has to be a cap on there. And I'm not saying be frugal. I'm not saying pinch every penny. I'm not like that. Like, I like to be generous when people are around me, and I would always encourage that. And that's an investment in itself, because I swear that stuff makes itself itself back to you. You know, if you look at it purely from the numbers and you think, oh, I'm going to buy this bread because it's 10p less than this one and all that stuff, I think that you're getting too into it. But all I am saying is there has to be some restriction somewhere, and there's always going to be financial excess weight, especially, let's go back to that individual I was talking about just a minute ago, 300K, 260K going out the door, right? There's got to be something we can save in there somewhere, you know? And like I say, I feel like too many people focus on the investing side because they think there's going to be the remedy to that. And I'm like, no, before we get onto that, it's the no-brainer, simple stuff, a little bit of budgeting. Here's a book for everybody, Kakabo. Has anybody heard of that book?
I've not heard of it.
It's a budgeting book, right? And it's the best. You want to make more money, you want to have a good investment, this is the best £10 you'll ever spend, because I guarantee you'll make that back in many multiples in the first month that you have this book, Kakabo. And all it does is, mate, it's brilliant, right? All it does is it just makes you think what's going in, what's coming in, what's going out. It makes you write down every direct debit. I guarantee you'll be like me, you'll find 3 or 4 in there that you'd forgotten about. Everybody does silly account fees and things like that. I actually changed my bank because of it, right? And I think I saved maybe 300 or 400, you know, just from account fees, just like that in a year, you know, never mind all the other stuff. Imagine my surprise when I found out about the berries, hey, you know, and it's very easy to hear that story and everybody's like, wow, how the hell did you do that? And I feel exactly the same. I'm incredulous because I'd never done the flipping math, right? Yeah. Kakabo, brilliant book. Just makes you write down everything that's coming in, everything that's going out, makes you think about spending, reviewing, and then takes you through this active process where you're reviewing how much is going in and out, because it's not just something that you do and then it's done. It makes you keep on top of it. You do it once a month, best 10 quid you've ever spent as an investment.
Okay, I'll check that out for sure. Bilal, your thoughts? Anything else that you think, or we?
No, I'm a massive proponent of planning, and I think you know, some of the stuff that we've done with James and a lot of the conversations we have is, you know, fail to prepare, then prepare to fail. And I know it's really cliche, but if you don't know what it is, then what are you working towards? How do you define what a successful year is? How do you understand how you've had a better year versus, you know, versus last year? Or if it's gone badly, why has it gone badly? And get on top of your numbers. You know, it doesn't take that much time. Speak to the right people, go on the right courses, speak to your accountant, you know, get more familiar with your accountant and be in charge of that conversation. And there's ways you can help that. It says, if you're the type of person that waits till December to get your numbers done, get it done in April. Because I guarantee your accountant will love you, because they will invariably have more time for you to get it done early as possible. And, you know, there's bookkeeping software you can download, you know, Xero, Free Agent, Sage, QuickBooks, all of that kind of stuff that you can jump all over and you can control the conversation. And the more you're in control of the conversation, the better quality of life you get from your accountant, because they don't have the system to get to the answer. If you do most of the legwork, they can spend most of the time adding value. And website isn't live yet, and I keep making this promise, is that we will have a free budget download where you can plan out your next 12, 24 months, and there will be a calculator on the back of it that says, regardless of what you make, if you need 50 grand, this is what you'd save if you went limited, and there's going to be quite a lot built into that, and that'll be a free download for you guys to play with.
That's great. Thanks, guys. Bilal, I wish you were around when my dad owned his business. He used to just own a shop and things like that. And I remember when he used to take his accounts to his accountant. Basically, what he used to do is he used to have a a crisp box, the Walker's crisp, the one that all the packets come in. And he just used to throw the receipts in there once a year. And just used to put tape on the top and say to his accountant, "Here you go, deal with it." So it was normally beginning of January.
Painful.
That's hilarious.
God bless the digital age,
Brilliant. Gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been fantastic talking to you. For those who are listening on the Dental Implant Podcast, James is actually the one who got me into investing and opened my eyes to that whole world. And he's got a community on Facebook as well. James, just remind us what the podcast is called, what the community is, so people can find you if they want.
Absolutely. So where myself and Pav know each other, and Bilal as well, actually, for that matter, is from a Facebook group that I created way back when called Dentists Who Invest. And it's for dentists who want to understand a little bit more about what I was talking about today, because there's way more detail, and also improve their financial literacy. That's the aim of the game. That's the point of the group. I'll see you all on there.
Bilal, thank you very much for your time as well this evening, mate. So it's I'm going to let you guys get onto it. I'm going to take my next dose of whatever it is I'm supposed to take. I think I'm going to go to sleep in another half hour as well.
Nice one.
All right.
Bye, mate.